friends, and welcome to episode 1 of Halloween Horror Nights with me, AndreaM. And we tonight are going to be embarking on our Halloween Horror Nights because, as you've probably all seen going around on Facebook at the moment, it's October. What does that mean? It's the end of August, so it's technically almost October. And it's time for all of us who love Halloween to start getting ready for Halloween. And I love Halloween so much, and I get to celebrate it twice a year, so yay! And I couldn't wait to get started on this year's spooky season with all of you. So tonight I will be reading 2 scary stories sent in by 2 of my lovely subscribers, and then I will be reading 5 other scary stories that have come in to me from a collection of Reader's Digest in Australia scary stories. And these are all scary stories from Australia, the ones from Reader's Digest, and the ones from our lovely subscribers one is from overseas and one is from here in Australia. So if you want to be a part of Halloween Horror Nights with me and enjoy a weekly reading of scary stories and me dressed up in something for Halloween, and if you haven't guessed tonight, I'm Stevie Nicks. Because I love her. She's my favourite ever. Been in love with her since I was 3. Love Fleetwood Mac so much. So tonight we're doing a little tribute to Stevie. And it's going to be a different costume every week and probably getting closer to Halloween. They're just going to keep getting... They're going to get away from the sublime to the ridiculous, I'm sure. Knowing me, because I won't be able to help myself. Because I love spooky season so much. Even though it's springtime in Australia when we celebrate Halloween with everybody else, I don't care, I still love it, and I'm still so excited. So if you would like to be a part of Halloween Horror Nights with me, you can send your scary stories to clarencevalleyparanormal@mail.com, or you can reach me through Reddit as well at TrueCrimeAngel23 or AndreaM Official, as it's also known. So please get your scary stories in. I would love to hear them. They can be from anywhere in the world. And they can be any type of scary stories, from a stalker to a paranormal experience to something crazy you've witnessed and not sure what it was, or an encounter in the woods. Anything you like, as long as it's a little bit creepy and scary. And I also wanted to start doing Halloween Horror Nights and doing a little bit of reading on the channel, because a lot of the readers that are on YouTube are responsible for me not having insomnia anymore, or just keeping me company when I'm working on art projects, which I do still do from time to time. And it's just a really great community, so big shout out to readers like Joel from Let's Read, and Swamp Dweller, and Raven, and Bad Vibes Storytelling, Southern Cannibal. These guys are all amazing, and if it wasn't for them, I would have had a lot of sleepless nights over a few months while I was sick, and they really helped get me through it. So thank you guys, and now I just wanted to give a little bit back. So you can put these on and relax, you can lay down, you can sleep to my voice if you'd like, whatever you would like to do while you're listening to these stories. So if you are of a mind to, grab yourself a blanket, a cup of something warm and cozy, probably with pumpkin spice, and let's get into these 7 scary stories from Australia and beyond. Happy October, everybody. They Came at Night by Sam M. Here's a true story I experienced in 2010-2012. On the outskirts of the rural areas bordering Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia, lies an even more remote area of Sand Mountain, located in Alabama. My husband and I bought an 18-acre, beautifully serene and picturesque plot of land in the middle of nowhere, with the closest neighbour being 1/4 mile away. The house was built at the turn of the century. Directly behind the house was the old smokehouse. People in the olden days would use it to cure their meats. Behind the smokehouse was the entrance to a below-ground cave, and in the field was a Native American Indian mound. I lived there with our 5 horses and 6 dogs. Of those dogs was my true Rottweiler companion, Raven. The first night, upon moving in, my husband and I tidied everything up, and decided to treat ourselves to dinner in the city. Upon returning home and going into our bedroom, there were hundreds of bugs just falling out of thin air, covering our entire king-sized bed, seemingly coming from nowhere. My husband and I quickly took in our entire bed dressings outside, bugs and all, and while more bugs kept appearing out of thin air, we checked every inch of the room and outside, even going into the attic to find the source. However, there was none. After about 45 minutes, the bugs stopped falling down. I guess whatever manifestation it was felt that we'd received its message. We both worked hard, long hours, and sometimes I wrote work-related reports from home, so I was home quite a bit with my Raven, and she was by my side constantly. Quite a few times, a dark, large, hooded figure would approach me. The hair on the back of my neck would stand up, and Raven would growl, so I knew something was there. Didn't pay attention to it at first, but when it would get up close to my face, Raven would go berserk, so I would demand that it leave me alone and recite the Lord's Prayer. At night it was the worst because my husband would see it too, since it would startle us both awake. But since I would be exhausted by then, I really fought at this disturbingly demonic entity. One night, 2 months before we finally moved, Raven growled a bit so it woke me up, and when I looked at what she was growling at, I was totally awestruck. Standing directly in front of our bed were 3 people. A woman in the middle of 2 men pointing at and looking at us and talking about us. I immediately nudged my husband awake and asked him if he saw anything and to describe what he saw. He was seeing the same spectrals. Their bodies were see-through, however, but we could make out with detail what they were wearing and exactly what they looked like. However, we couldn't make out exactly what they were saying. By this point, I was physically exhausted from work and had to get a good night's sleep, so I asked them kindly to keep their voices down and leave us alone so that we could continue sleeping. By the way, same house we experienced high category tornadoes. 3 tornadoes side by side that came at us head on, and as we watched and were helpless, but they skirted around the house. Weird. Before moving, we found out the area we used as our bedroom used to be the old parlour, where in the early part of the 1900s, families would lay out their deceased relatives. Thanks for listening. Wrong Head Count, Story Number 2 by Dizzy L. I was living in Yamina on the Central Coast and was friends with a neighbour a few doors down. All the houses had been there for at least 40 years or more. Her house was very long and the dining room was in the middle. She had 3 boys, and at the time I had Ben around 5 and Sarah was 2. She used to do tarot cards. All the kids were playing out front and decided to run through the house to the back garden where we were having tea and chatting and watching out the peripheral of our eyes as the kids ran past doing a head count. There were 6. I went out to the back and counted 5, looking around for the 6th, and thought to myself, I must be going crazy. So we went back to my tea and chatting. Then suddenly my hair lifted up like someone was playing with it. However, no one was there. I said to my friend, "Can you see what's happening here?" She laughed and said, "Yep, we have a child ghost. She trusts you, and so she is playing with you as well." The following 5 stories come from a compilation on Reader's Digest Australia, and most are originally from Reddit. Little Hands by Patented Spacehook. I've never lived in a haunted house, but my mother did as a teen. Other houses on her street had strange things going on too. A few homes away from her lived a man and his family. One night, one of his daughters went to bed with a bad headache. The next day, she was dead. She'd passed away from an aneurysm. After the funeral, the family went away to get their minds off the tragedy, and the father asked my uncle, my mum's brother, to check on their pets. My mum and dad, they were dating then, went with my uncle. My mother had heard there was a grand piano and she wanted to play it, and my dad was studying to be a veterinarian. After entering the house, my uncle and my father headed to the basement to see the animals, and my mother went to the piano on the ground floor. She was playing it when she felt something brush her ankles. She thought a cat must have left the basement and walked past her. She kept playing and she felt it again. She looked under the piano and saw nothing. When she started again, she felt hands clasp her legs and grab them tightly. She dashed to the basement door, called my uncle and father, and waited for them. When they walked outside, my uncle could tell that my mother was rattled and asked what was wrong. She told him what had happened, and he turned white. He told her the daughter who died used to play a game with her father. When he'd play the piano, she'd crawl underneath, grab his ankles, and push his feet up and down on the pedals. Story number 4. The Unseen Patient by Anonymous. The ambulance company that I used to work for had a haunted ambulance, Rig 12. A lot of EMTs had stories about it, but I never put much stock in paranormal stuff. That is, until I had my own experience with Rig 12. My partner and I were working in a rural community at 3 a.m, and it was pitch dark and completely quiet. We were both dozing. I was in the driver's seat and she was in the passenger seat. I woke up to a muffled voice and I thought my partner was talking. I told her I was trying to sleep and closed my eyes. I distinctly heard a male voice saying, "Oh my God, am I dying?" followed by a few seconds of heavy breathing. My partner and I sat up straight and looked back into the patient compartment where it sounded like the voice had come from. Things were quiet for a couple of seconds, then we heard the click of an oxygen bottle regulator and a hiss as if it was leaking. I turned on the lights and we ran out of the rig. I thought a transient might have climbed in while we were asleep. So we opened the rear doors. No one was there. I checked the oxygen bottles. Neither was opened. We didn't sleep much after that. Story number 5. The Impish Ghost by Abbeys Alibi. My neighbour Diane and I had a playful poltergeist for years, and we called it Billy. I'd come home and find something put in a weird place. Milk in a cupboard, toilet paper in the fridge, laundry detergent in the bathtub. Diane once called to ask if Billy had been around because she couldn't find a gallon of milk. We finally found it outside on her back steps. And sugar! Darn, sugar! Every morning my sugar bowl was empty. When I had enough, I'd point to Diane's home and yell, "Go see Diane!" Within 5 minutes, I'd get a call from her and she'd say, "Thanks a lot," because he'd gone and pulled shenanigans at her place. This occurred for the entire 2 years that we lived here. No one believed us, not even our husbands. My mother thought someone was stealing from us while we were sleeping or out of the house. My sister believed something was going on, but didn't know what. And I still can't explain any of it. Story number 6. The Eerie Attic by Digsclaws. It seems so cliched to start by saying I don't believe in ghosts, but, however, that's where I'm coming from. A few years ago, I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. It was my first time living on my own. The apartment block had been built in the 1930s. I'd been there for a few months when I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom. I saw something strange. The wooden board covering a hole in the ceiling that led to a small attic space lay broken in 2 pieces on the ground. I examined the broken pieces. The board was an inch thick, and it would have taken a Bruce Lee to break it. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work on the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. I thought someone is up there for sure. I emailed pictures to the landlord, asking if anyone has been here, with an undertone of annoyance, since she hadn't warned me. Her reply read as follows: "Please call me as soon as you are able to." I called and she explained that her last two tenants had the same thing happen. She promised to replace the board, and she did. A month later, I woke up one night at around 4 a.m. I had so many goosebumps I felt like someone was rubbing his or her hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard this sound coming from above my bed. It was a dragging sound, like somebody was pulling a sack of potatoes. I was frozen stiff with fear. I thought someone is up there for sure. There is no way an animal could make that sound. After 5 minutes, I managed to work up the courage to turn on the light and walk to the bathroom. I was armed with a cricket bat. When I looked, I saw the new board covering the hole was broken in two, and I felt sick. The dragging sound had stopped, but I heard something else, whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like children's voices, and I could hear the sentence repeated over and over. It's your turn. It's your turn. It's your turn. I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel more normal. It was 5 a.m. and dark outside. I watched TV to try and unwind, but then a fuse blew. My pet budgie Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, usually never made a sound at night, but he started squawking like he was being strangled. I'd never heard him make those sorts of noises. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys, ran out, sat in my car, and waited there until the sun came up. When I saw people walking their dogs, this comforted me enough to go back in. The front door was open, but I thought I hadn't closed it when I'd run out. I went to the kitchen to check on Dexter, and he wasn't in his cage. I felt sick again. All my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked to the bathroom, I heard splashing. Dexter was half drowned in the toilet. I took him out, washed him, and dried him. I was so confused. At 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night. "Oh, wow, you heard the whispering too," she said. I stayed in that apartment for another 18 months. I heard the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering the hole in the ceiling moved. Although I lived elsewhere, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants had begged to speak with me about some of the stuff that's been going on there. Forget it, it's their problem now. Story number 7, The Eyeless Boy, by KMendo 4. One night when I was 10, I was woken up by my bedroom door opening, followed by someone sitting on my bed. I felt my leg grazed and the bed sink under a person's weight. Thinking it was my mum, I opened my eyes to see an eyeless boy. He had black, empty eye sockets, about my age, sitting at the foot of my bed. He extended his hand, and in it was a little box. I was startled but reached out. He pulled back. I reached again and said, "Give it." Then I blinked, and when I reopened my eyes, he was gone. But the imprint of someone sitting on my bed was still present. Fast forward 5 years, my girlfriend came over to do homework. After she finished, she took a nap while she waited for her parents. When they arrived, I tried waking her up. Suddenly she opened her eyes and looking up at a corner where the wall met the ceiling. She pointed there and went back to sleep. I shook her again. She came to full consciousness and I explained what she'd done. And she said, "Up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there in a Spider-Man pose staring at me." I freaked out and told her my story about the same kid. Fast forward another 5 years, I was with the same girlfriend and we had a 2-year-old. We were living in my parents' house in my old room. My daughter started waking up at the same time every night and she'd talk. After a while, I noticed she had almost the same conversation every night. I playfully asked her once whom was she talking to. She said, "It's a little boy. He's nice. He's lost and looking for his mummy." My daughter's nightly conversations continued until we got our own place later that year. So those were some pretty creepy stories. I managed to read them all without freaking myself out. And I can really relate to the gentleman with the thing in the attic. As I've mentioned before, I grew up in a home very similar to our beloved Conjuring house. It was full of spirits. Most of them were good. One of them was a particularly nasty one, and he would torment me endlessly. And what he would do is he would walk back and forward, over, up in the ceiling in the attic, right above my bed. And I'd hear him walking back and forth every night. And I used to be so scared I wouldn't want to turn the lights out. And sometimes I'd forget and I'd turn them out and I'd come back to my room and the lights would actually be on. And my dad used to get really mad at me because he was worried about us wasting electricity. And he'd be like, you can't leave your light on when you're not in your room. You're wasting electricity. And I'd try to say, but I didn't leave it on, Dad. But he didn't believe me because I'm a little kid and he thought that I was telling fibs. But I think there was a friendly phantom that was trying to keep me safe from what was residing in the attic. And around the house was like a wraparound veranda and it was all built in. And during the day, that used to be where I would go and I'd play with my dolls and things and paint and just do little kid stuff. But as soon as the sun started going down, I would hot-foot it out of there because he would walk back and forward on the veranda as well. And the interesting part about the house was not the house itself, but where it was located. And what used to be on that property was a hotel. Back in the day, in the 1800s, there was a hotel there. And it actually burnt to the ground. And what the man in the attic actually showed me was that he died in that fire. And he was really angry about it because he had been a little, let's say, tipsy. And he had passed out. And he wasn't somebody that people liked very much. So nobody bothered to check on him. And he died in the fire in his sleep. But he's always been a very angry spirit. And he still resides in the house. So something creepy up in the attic, it'll get my goose pimples going every time because I know what it's like to have that happen. So I hope you guys enjoyed our first of, I hope to be many Halloween horror nights with me that will be running right through up until Halloween. And I'm hoping to go live on All Hallows Eve and read the best of the stories in a compilation and, get dressed up and put on more full Halloween costumes and have some pumpkin spice lattes and some candy and some other fun Halloween treats, and we can enjoy Halloween together, which I think would be really fun. So please get your submissions in. I need more. I want more. I would love to hear more so that we can have a really good big compilation for Halloween night. And I hope to hear from you all soon. Please don't be shy. I would love to hear your stories. It doesn't matter how far-fetched or weird they seem. I'm weird and far-fetched. I understand. I get it. Send them in. I'd love to hear them. Okay, everybody. Have a great night and sleep tight. See you all again soon.